Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I know the Honorable Pukose is eager for us to put the question, but just before we do that, Honorable Speaker, let me rise to support the committee's report and commend the committee because they worked very hard to consider the vetting of Mr. Renson Igonga as the next DPP of our nation, Mulele Igonga. Honorable Speaker, even as I commend the committee, because whenever public officers go through vetting, Honorable Speaker, and they pass, and their integrity is verified by the members of the committees that vet them, Honorable Speaker, they walk into these public offices with their heads high. But what happens when they're in office, Honorable Speaker, is a story for another day. And I want to encourage Mr. Renson Mulele that he, if approved by the House today, walks into office with his integrity being beyond reproach. And I want to ask him to ensure that his integrity remains that way even for the time he will serve as our DPP. Honorable Speaker, we must also caution the next DPP to be cautious of those others that may want to influence his office to settle scores with other Kenyans. Honorable Speaker, in the last regime, we saw particularly the office of the DCI trying to micromanage the office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. And the office of the DPP is such an important office to remain functionally independent of the investigative agencies, independent of all other forces that may exist within the governance structures of our country. I therefore want to encourage Mr. Renson to ensure that functional independence of the office of the DPP remains so that when people are prosecuted in this country, you are prosecuted purely on the basis of evidence that will be adduced against you in court, not on the whims of officers who are investigating you. Therefore, he must be cautious and scrutinize all files that are brought to him from the investigative agencies to ensure that they have adequate evidence that will sustain cases in court. And Honorable Speaker, in conclusion, let me ask the incoming DPP, if approved by this House this afternoon, to work not to secure convictions, but to work to secure and guarantee justice to the people of Kenya, so that every Kenyan who is prosecuted before our courts, be it for criminal or civil cases, Honorable Speaker, if convicted, they will also feel that indeed justice has been served, because they will know they were guilty and they were convicted out of their guilt. And those who are prosecuted unfairly and they are not guilty, Honorable Speaker, that they will feel that they have justice has been served if they are not prosecuted and convicted. And that is on to ask the incoming DPP, if approved, Mr. Renson Mulele, to work towards securing justice and not convictions, so that, Honorable Speaker, years after he has served in this office, we will be able to proudly refer to his time in office, as we can proudly speak to the performance of DPP Nurdin Haji. Because Nurdin Haji is one of the DPPs who served under one of the most strenuous regimes. DPP Haji served under a regime that wanted to use his office to prosecute political cases, and he was firm. He ensured that justice is served, and he ensured the functional integrity and independence of the office of the DPP. And therefore, Renson has shoes to fit into of DPP Nurdin Haji. And Honorable Speaker, he must also work as Nurdin Haji worked to ensure, as much as we had a rogue DCI then, DCI Amin is not like DCI, former DCI Kinoti. And therefore, I do expect that the DPP, the incoming DPP, will work with the current office bearers at EACC and DCI to ensure that indeed they serve justice to Kenyans that will be prosecuted through the office of the DPP. And with those many remarks, Honorable Speaker, I beg to support and congratulate Mr. Renson Mulele, should he be approved, and do hope and urge members to approve this gentleman who, following the vetting, at least the committee has said in their report that his integrity is beyond reproach. He is a professional advocate of high standing and a man who we want to believe will serve our country with integrity and deliver justice to Kenyans. Honorable Speaker, I beg to support.
Farah Maalim.
Honorable Speaker, I also rise to support this motion. Honorable Speaker, I happen to be a member of the JLAC, and along with my other members of the committee, we went to lengths to establish that Mr. Renson fits the job. And I can tell you, his integrity, to the best of our own judgment, is beyond reproach. I rise not only to support him for this position, but I also rise to urge this Parliament, this House. We will, through the JLAC, which I'm a member of, privileged to be a member of, to try and find out what kind of legislative regimes that the DPP would require to make it easier for him to deal with some of the rampant issues we have in this country. Sometimes a prosecutor would want to do a very good job, but he's constrained in many ways by the kind of very lackluster and very permissive manner in which we have approached some of our things, and including in the Constitution right now. And there's need for us to revisit our Constitution. I was in this Parliament and in this country when you are at a time when somebody is accused of a capital punishment, for example, a capital crime. It doesn't matter what you are. You could be a member of Parliament, but you sit in remand until the matter itself is resolved. Nowadays, you can kill as many people as you want, and you say that because everybody has a right to bail, you go and you work your way through the courts and you get your bail. There's need for us, Mr. Speaker, under these circumstances, for us to be able to assist a gentleman like this man we have right now, who is really raring to go to make a difference in this country's prosecutions for the future, to be given the right tools. When they are going to be constrained by the laws and the constitution of the country, and you allow people to do whatever they want to do, and to come out there and influence also things, and the courts, the manner in which they operate in this country, then sometimes with the best person you still do expect the least to come out of. I want us to be ready for this road ahead in which DPP will be fighting corruption, prosecuting people who are guilty of corruption, large-scale corruptions in this country. And those people can stay behind bars in committee regardless of what their status is, until the matter is determined. But if he knows he can come out and still engage in others, then of course the system will have to mess us. Mr. Speaker, I want us to be a country that observes the rule of law, not ruled by law. Not ruled by law. So we will, as a Parliament, in my opinion, humble opinion, undertake also to make legislative provisions in this country that's going to help the prosecutor to deal with cases of corruption, economic crimes, and many other rampant criminal activities that happen in our country, so that these can be reined in the future. I wish the Parliament approves that, the appointment of Mr. Renson Mulele as the next DPP, and I wish him the best in terms of the performance of that job, and wish also this country will have a difference in the manner in which we are going to run our own prosecutorial and other things in the future for the benefit of the wider population of Kenya. Thank you.
I thought we had agreed. Okay, let me give KJ 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I know the interest is high, and so I'll be very brief.
Honorable Bukose. Honorable Bukose, you're out of order.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity, and I'll take the earliest opportunity to first congratulate the chairman and the Committee of Justice and Legal Affairs for moving this motion, but most importantly, for doing the job that Parliament is mandated to do in the nomination of such a candidate. Mr. Speaker, even those of us who do not know Mr. Renson Mulele Igonga in person are able to understand the character of an individual who we are proving this afternoon from the report that has been presented here. And for that, I commend the committee and I commend the chair. Mr. Speaker, the work that Mr. Renson is coming into is an office that is of great public interest, especially at a time such as this. He is succeeding an individual who has performed extraordinarily well. Former DPP Nurdin Haji had a very illustrious time in this office, at a very difficult time, Mr. Speaker. At a time when the criminal justice system was being politicized, Mr. Speaker, he stood his ground. He held his head high and worked out of integrity, Mr. Speaker. These are the shoes that Mr. Renson has to fill, Mr. Speaker. Beyond that, Mr. Speaker, because I would not want to take much more time, I'd like to say to Mr. Renson Mulele Igonga that the criminal space in Kenya and internationally has really evolved, Mr. Speaker. The criminals are becoming more innovative. The criminals are using newer tools. The criminals are using new technology. So even as he goes into the office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, Mr. Renson will have to keep up with the times. They will have to be a bit more innovative in how they prosecute the people. Ultimately, he shall not be judged by the number of people that he jails. He shall be judged by the perception of the justice that his office shall be offering this country. So, Mr. Speaker, we would ask him to look into the new technologies to see how that can help in the prosecution of cases, Mr. Speaker. We will ask him to be fair, to carry himself with a lot of integrity, but most importantly, for this country, he has an opportunity to move us to the next space in terms of using technology in public prosecution. Mr. Speaker, I'll take the last minute to welcome a school that is in your gallery, a school known as Lenana Junior from the Dagoretti South constituency, who happen to be in Parliament today, and I'd like to welcome them to Parliament, and they are able to see the job that the man their parents put in office does in the House. Mr. Speaker, I take this opportunity to welcome the learners from Lenana Junior School in the Dagoretti South constituency. Thank you very much.
Johanna, 2 minutes.
Asante Bwana Spika, yangu tu ni kusema ya kwamba hii ofisi yenye Bwana Mulele anaenda kupewa, Bwana Spika, ni ofisi yenye iko na jukumu mingi sana, na kama venye wenzangu wamesema, Bwana Spika, ni ya kwamba makesi nchi hii, shida mingi katika nchi yetu ya Kenya ni makesi ambayo imekaa kotini kwa miaka mingi sana bila kusuluhishwa, bila kumalizwa, aidha kwa sababu DPP hajajipea ile nafasi ya kumaliza. Lakini zaidi, Bwana Spika, kitu yenye mimi mwenyewe ningependa kusihi huyu Mulele ni kwamba akipata hiyo nafasi, Bwana Spika, ahakikishe kwamba kama kesi ya mtu ifanyike kulingana na yale makosa ambayo mtu amefanya. Isikuwe ni ofisi yenye wanasiasa wanaitumia. Isikuwe ni ofisi yenye state pia inaweza kuitumia kuangamiza watu ambao hawana makosa. Bwana Spika, watu wengi Kenya hii saa hii wako na makesi kotini bila sababu, yenye ikifunguliwa, ukiona venye imefunguliwa mashtaka, Bwana Spika, hizo makeses haistahili kuwa kwa hizo makotini, ingekuwa imemalizwa. Kwa hivyo nasihi Bwana Mulele akipata hiyo nafasi ahakikishe kwamba hizo makesi yenye haina umuhimu yoyote aimalize, aikamilishe, ndio nchi yetu iendelee vizuri. Asante Bwana Spika.
Last, before we call the mover, David Ocheng.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I want to support the nomination of Mr. Mulele Igonga as our next DPP, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the country today, you would think that crime pays. Because, Mr. Speaker, we've got a level where anything goes in our criminal justice system, Mr. Speaker. Our criminal justice system has so many leaks, so many cracks. You can never know, even where the facts are very clear of a case, you can never know how a case will go. Even where someone has done something that is so clear to the public that this must be punished, they are never punished, Mr. Speaker. And so I want to ask Mr. Mulele that when confirmed, his job is not only to fight corruption, no. For corruption, you have the EACC. His job is to ensure that the criminal justice system of the country works for everyone equally, works for everyone fairly. Mr. Speaker, in the villages where we come from, Mr. Speaker, the prosecutors and the investigators in the villages, they always colluding with criminals, and you don't get anything happening down there, Mr. Speaker. A case can be so clear, but tomorrow you are told that the investigator has been given money to mess up the case. If not, that's not the case. The prosecutor has been given money to mess up a case, Mr. Speaker. So that at the end of the day, what gets to the courts, Mr. Speaker, is not what would get a conviction, Mr. Speaker. A prosecutor cannot get a conviction, Mr. Speaker, will not deter crime. A prosecutor who cannot ensure that people who mess up with our laws are not punished will not deter crime, Mr. Speaker. And so we want to ask Mr. Mulele that just like the person you are to succeed today, ensure that you have ready to the law, trust the law only, don't look the other side and say, who is telling me what? The moment you start listening to other quarters, you will not be independent, you will not protect this country from murdering criminals. Mr. Speaker, I support this and wish Mr. Mulele the best in his new appointment. Thank you.
Beatrice Elachi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise to congratulate Mr. Mulele, Mr. Speaker, but to also just inform him that now you enter into an institution that you have to be very clear on how you want to take the country. Mr. Speaker, you remember this is an institution that has been used so badly that every person will be used with the EACC and be taken to the DPP, and you find yourself either with a case or no case. And that we are saying it is for him now to streamline and to look at all the prosecutors that have been there. And if possible, to ensure now you start a new slate by sending some of those prosecutors who have been so much in Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, outside Nairobi also. But the other thing, Mr. Speaker, is to look at the different cases, especially cases of young people, where you have the youths who have so many cases that are just lying in courts, and you find that the DPP will never find the prosecutor, sorry, Mr. Speaker, will be in court and he's unable to get even witnesses, he's unable to even follow through the case. The case has no any substantive measure to move on, and therefore they levy into all these remands that we have, Mr. Speaker, and you wonder when will their cases end. So I'm hoping as he comes in also, he has to look at cases that can be ended, case to end, and also the cases that don't have any substantive issue to be, and young people also to be released now from these cases, Mr. Speaker. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, there is also another issue that is very interesting, that today you find that there's a case in court, and it is the prosecutor who will be asking now the parents, especially issues of land. And we are hoping now we can end these issues of land, and especially issues of widows who are now wondering what to do next with their cases in court. With those few remarks, I wish him well, and I hope he will cooperate with other institutions to see that Kenya within the justice system is working and working better. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, Songoli, if you can be brief.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I will be very brief. I don't know the nominee personally, but the description given by the mover creates an impression of a person who is qualified to get this job. Therefore, I don't oppose. But, Mr. Speaker, just 2 points. The first one is that when the policemen were prosecutors, you could go to court and find that the prosecutor is the first person to be there. Today, and I say this as a practicing advocate, you go to court, the magistrate is waiting for the prosecutor to arrive. That is because most of these people consider themselves so qualified that the magistrate has even to wait for them. I hope Mr. Renson will take note of this and make sure that at least he instills punctuality for the prosecutors, so that advocates and other and litigants do not go to court and wait for them. The second point is that Mr. Renson should realize that as a prosecutor, it is his responsibility to collect the evidence and table the evidence before the court. It is unfair sometimes when I hear many people blaming the court and saying they have released a criminal. The fodder for prosecuting, the fodder for convicting a person must be provided by the prosecutor. If the prosecutor decides to withhold evidence, that person will have to go home, because our criminal justice system depends on nothing other than evidence. So he has his job cut, and I support.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. In reply, I wish to thank everyone, all the members who have made their contributions in support of the report and the proposed nomination. I also thank the committee for the work they did, including the secretariat that, Mr. Speaker, you gave to us through the clerk. The work was well done, and I believe this is the reason why we have received the overwhelming support. Mr. Renson must be listening from somewhere. He has had and received all the accolades. But I must also inform him that most of us here are potential candidates to visit him in different ways, of a cup of tea, but most likely as suspects to be tried for possibly many serious offenses. Please do not listen to what they have said. Just do your work without considering who is who, and ensure that the law is actually followed to the letter, even for some of us. With those remarks, I move to reply.
Thank you.